Hello and welcome back to Vip's Biochemistry. This time we will be discussing mechanism of hormone action. Now hormones are chemical messengers and they can be classified in different ways like based on chemical nature, based on mechanism of action or site of production. Based on chemical nature, they can be protein or polypeptide hormones which are relatively large. For example, growth hormone, insulin, glucagon belongs to this category. Then there are catecholamines and thyroid hormones which are small and are derived from amino acids. For example, epinephrine is a catecholamine hormone, thyroxine is a thyroid hormone. Both are formed from the amino acid, namely tyrosine. Another category of hormones is steroid hormones, which are relatively small and derived from cholesterol. For example, estrogen, testosterone, cortisol, all of them are steroid hormones. Now, vitamin D is sometimes considered as a hormone-like substance. Another hormone-like substance is prostaglandin, which are relatively small and are derived from fatty acids. Now, there are different roles of hormones in our body, in our cells. We can go through this. Now, when we discuss the mechanism of action of hormones, we have to see what a receptor is. Now, receptors are protein assemblies in a cell to which hormones bind in order to bring about their response, in order to effect their response. Now, there are different types of receptors also, which are basically protein assemblies, all of them. Now, receptors may be mobile or moving receptors, and there are membrane-bound fixed receptors are though. Now, these mobile receptors can be present in nucleus. So they are nuclear receptors. For example, estrogen take the root of nuclear receptors, nuclear mobile receptors. Whereas there are cytoplasmic receptors which are present in the cytoplasm. Cortisol and thyroxine take the root of mobile cytoplasmic receptors. Whereas this category, that is membrane fixed receptor, they are attached on the membrane, cell membrane or plasma membrane, and they are used by protein hormones and catecholamines. For example, glucagon and epinephrine take the root of cell membrane fixed receptors. Now, let us see in detail the mechanism of hormone action. Basically, two mechanisms are involved. The first one is the mobile receptor mechanism, which actually involves direct gene activation, direct DNA activation. So here, hormone as with the receptor, the mobile receptor, come into direct contact with DNA, which gets activated. All the steroid hormones as well as thyroid hormones takes this route. Now, whereas the cell surface or the fixed cell surface receptor mechanism is effected through the service of a second messenger. So second messenger is involved, which means the hormone never comes into direct contact with the DNA or gene. All these non-steroid hormones like protein polypeptide hormones, catecholamine hormones uses this mechanism. Now, first of all, let us see the steroid hormone action through mobile receptor mechanism. The steps involved are given here in brief. Now, hormone diffuses directly through cell membrane, the plasma membrane. It crosses through plasma membrane, binds to a mobile receptor protein in cytosol or inside the nucleus. This hormone receptor complex directly binds to specific sites, specific genes on DNA. These specific genes are activated to synthesize new proteins. So this is the first mechanism. Let us see this in detail. So this figure actually explains the mobile receptor mechanism adopted by steroid hormones and fatty acid derived hormones. Now this is the plasma membrane of the cell with nucleus and cytoplasm, of course, cytoplasm or cytosol. Now you can see the steroid hormone which passes through it is transported through the blood vessel. And steroid hormone, unlike the protein or amino acid derived hormones, it has to be carried by a protein carrier. And the steroid hormones, when it is released, it can actually cross the plasma membrane of the cell because it is hydrophobic and it can pass through the hydrophobic core of the membrane. And unlike protein hormones, we don't need a receptor, a membrane attached receptor here. The hydrophilic nature of the protein hormones do not allow it to cross this membrane, but this is unlike steroids. I mean, steroids can cross or steroid derived hormones can cross the plasma membrane and reach cytoplasm. So when steroid hormones are released like this, when it is released, it can cross the membrane and reach the cytosol, where it will meet with the mobile receptors, either in the cytosol or inside the nucleus. So these are mobile carriers which can carry steroid hormone inside the cytoplasm or to the nucleus also. Here, most of the steroid hormones and thyroid hormone also uses cytoplasmic receptor to get carried to the nucleus. So what happens is that this is attached like here and carried to the nucleus. Whereas some of the other steroid hormones, for example, estrogen, it uses the nuclear receptors, like directly uses the nuclear receptors. So anyway, both of them will have an effect on DNA. So this actually gets attached to the hormone response elements of DNA and induces DNA to transcribe to give rise to messenger RNA. The hormone receptor complex, along with other factors, transcription factors, induces transcription. So an mRNA is formed like this. An mRNA is formed. mRNA can cross the nuclear membrane to reach the cytosol. Now this is mRNA, and mRNA can give rise to proteins through protein synthesis. So this is the mechanism followed by steroid hormones, and this mechanism is called mobile receptor mechanism. The second mechanism is non-steroid hormone action through membrane receptor mechanism and through the service of a second messenger. Here, hormone acts as the first messenger and binds to a membrane receptor. The activated membrane receptor, it sets off a series of reactions which result in the production of a second messenger. And there are different types of second messengers like calcium, cyclic AMP, inositol triphosphate, which all can act as second messengers which passes the message, and the second messenger trigger intracellular changes inside the cell so as to induce specific responses in target cell. This is actually by inducing or activating other enzymes. Let us see how it happens. So this figure explains the fixed membrane receptor mechanism. As you can see here, this is the cell with the plasma membrane having an attached membrane receptor. The membrane receptor shown here is the 7 transmembrane or 7 helical receptor having a G protein attached to it. So this is the G protein coupled receptor. The G protein is composed of alpha, beta, gamma subunits with a DDP attached to alpha subunit. Now, through the blood vessel, protein hormones are transported. So non-steroidal hormone means it can be a protein hormone, for example, glucagon, or an amino acid derivative hormone like epinephrine, all of which need this receptor, the membrane fixed receptor, because these hormones cannot pass through this hydrophobic core of plasma membrane. So what happens is that you can see the adenylate cyclase, the enzyme, which is a membrane bound enzyme shown here, and the part of which is extended to the cytosol. Now, what happens is that the protein hormone passes to this and it is released to the extracellular fluid. It gets attached here like this. So when it is attached to the fixed membrane, the 7 transmembrane helix as shown here, what happens is that this particular receptor is induced, and the G protein coupled receptor, it acts in such a way that it actually exchanges a GTP for GDP. So GDP is released and the G protein, it gets dissociated, and the alpha subunit like this together with the GTP. Now it is GTP which is attached to us, GTP. It gets attached to the adenylate cyclase enzyme. Now the adenylate cyclase, it gets activated, and what happens is that the activated adenylate cyclase converts ATP to cyclic AMP. AMP. So now cyclic AMP is the second messenger here for this hormone, for this protein hormone, whether it is epinephrine or amino acid derivative, namely epinephrine, or a protein hormone, namely glucagon. The cyclic AMP acts as a second messenger. Here the hormone, as I said, it acts as the first messenger. So this is a basic mechanism of a fixed receptor model. And what happens is that this cyclic AMP now carries on with its function of activating more enzymes. Cyclic AMP can immediately, what it can do is that it can activate another enzyme, namely protein kinase A. Protein kinase A to its active form, namely protein kinase A active, which can carry on with the cascade of enzyme activation. This is how the enzyme cascade effect is brought about by the first messenger, namely hormone. You can see here the epinephrine or glucagon, the 7 transmembrane, the receptor complex, the G protein here. The adenylate cyclase is activated so as to give cyclic AMP, and cyclic AMP actually induces a series of cascade reactions. So finally here, this is an example. This example is given for that of a glycogenolysis. Thank you.